Day, everyone. This is Steve Anderson, and welcome to our webinar today. I know it's still morning in some parts of the country, afternoon in others, and straight up noon Central Time, so we're excited to have everyone here. Just a couple of preliminaries, and I've got some housekeeping announcements as well. If you're joining us for the first time, we're in listen-only mode. You are, so you should be able to hear me. But we cannot hear you for obvious reasons. So there's no background noise, and we'll be able to hear the presentation. So you are at any time welcome to ask questions, and the way to do that is to go in your control panel on your computer screen, and there is a question box. You can do the pull-down menu, and you can type in a question at any time, and we will take those as they come in at the end of the presentation. I'm going to go through this. This is, by the way, being recorded as always. So if there are team members that are not with you today, they can go back and watch it. It'll be posted on crowncouncil.org in the webinar section, as well as we will send out an email to everybody letting them know that it is available. It usually takes an hour or two to process all of that. So let me go through just a couple of quick announcements for everybody's information. The Smiles for Life campaign 2015 is well underway, and great things happening in that. If you'll make sure and pay attention to the Crown Council alert that goes out by email to every office on Friday. We have an update each week on how much money has been raised and where it came from, and we have a fun, friendly competition going among the offices for total amount of money raised as well as amounts per team member. So thank you for all you're doing to make a difference in the lives of children. It's a great effort, and we're excited to be involved with you in that once again. As announced in January at the annual event, the 2016 annual event will be held in Salt Lake City. We haven't had an event in Salt Lake City since 2002 when the Winter Olympics were there, and we're very excited to be in Salt Lake City at one of the finest hotels in America, the Grand America Hotel, that was built specifically for the Winter Olympics. And we've been there recently. It has been recently updated. It's absolutely gorgeous, and we have some amazing things planned for Salt Lake City. So if you have not registered yet, I'd highly recommend it. We already have record enrollment each year it climbs, so we're very much looking forward to that the end of January 2016. Finally, quick question is, are you mobile ready? Meaning, is your website been built to be mobile ready? If you don't know what that means, here's how you figure it out. Is you take your smartphone and you go to your browser, pull up your office website, and if your website does not automatically conform to your the screen on your phone where you can just scroll down to see the different frames, if you have to try and move things around to see everything on your website page, then your website is not mobile ready. The reason that's important is that Google has announced that on April 21st, they are going to change Google Search Analytics, and websites that are not mobile ready, I'm going to say that they'll be sidelined, but they will be at a significant disadvantage in search results. So that's something you might want to take a look at if you're not aware of that, if you haven't looked at it. There are some solutions for that. You're welcome to call the Crown Council office. There's the 800 number at the bottom, 276-9658. And we've got some resources that the Crown Council is plugged into, including Dental CMO, that can help you be mobile ready here by the deadline. So just food for thought. If you haven't paid attention to that, very important. And we're grateful to Dental CMO they've got a great Smiles for Life contribution that they're doing for everyone that is doing a new website. So with that, let's talk about our webinar topic today. Let me just say this is really an introductory comment to this. While you can't see me, I can see all of your names, so we know everybody who signed up, and so it's really kind of cool because I get to see who's listening. And with that in context, seeing everybody that's listening today, let me just say this about this topic and really about everything that we talk about. For some of you, this may be review. For others, it may be brand new. For some of you, you may be in an office that we've worked with very closely where you have new team members. But I'll just share with you an interesting experience I had recently in doing a seminar for a dental society on the East Coast. And I had a Crown Council member with me. And we went through the entire day. And this is a Crown Council member that's been with us for over 20 years. And we got done and he said, man, this is great stuff. I really need to get you to come train my whole team. And I was under the mistaken impression that, he was totally plugged into all of this stuff. And I forget there's turnover and time goes by and things slip through the cracks. So I would say this about this and everything else we do, that if you hear something that you've heard before, the question that I would ask you would be, if you know it, are you doing it? Because that's really the true test for all of us. It's not just the knowing. Knowing is not doing. Doing is doing. And so if you hear things you've heard before, are you doing it? To what degree are you doing it? Can you do it better in order to get better results? So I hope that helps at least lay the groundwork for what we'll talk about today. There are some particular reasons that we chose this topic this month that are timely, and I'll mention those as we go through these so that you can at least check what you're currently doing and making sure that you're totally up to date. So with that, the question is, what is it that we missed? We titled this webinar, You Missed It, Secrets of the Most Overlooked Case Acceptance Tool in Dentistry. So that is the first question. What is it that you missed? Well, let me give you the context of this. Some of you have heard this story before, and it's amazing how it continues to recur. So when our team goes into a dental practice, so our team meaning the practice advisor team at the Total Patient Service Institute, our whole team is out across the country every day in dental practices implementing the highest level of case acceptance systems and verbal skills and practices. And so we are hands-on every day working on the whole case acceptance equation and working on ways to improve case acceptance and overall productivity. Now, I realize that many of you have not seen this in many years because most everybody is digital, but just to illustrate the point here, one of the things that we do is we'll go in initially and take a random sample of patient records, digital or paper, just a random sample, and we go through and do an analysis of a number of different things. We look at the dental health history form, we look at what was diagnosed, what was treatment planned, what was presented, and what was accepted. And we look at that whole sequence to get a feel for what the philosophy of care is and what's generally going on in the practice. So when we take a look at, the first thing we look at is the dental health history form and all of the forms that the patient fills out. And one of the things that is a particular interest to us because of what it leads to is we always look on the dental history form for the whitening question. Now, most everybody has a whitening question on their dental history form. And if you don't, I would highly recommend that you do. It is one of the, it's really an entry-level cosmetic procedure. Most people want white teeth, and so it naturally begs the question to have on your dental history form. Now, here is the one that we have found is the most effective to have on your dental history form. If you could whiten your teeth for an investment anyone could afford, would you be interested? You might want to jot that down. This is not a new question. This isn't something that is the first time we're presenting it. I've talked about this question for a number of years. So the question would be is, do you have this on your form? This is the one that we recommend. If you could whiten your teeth for an investment anyone could afford, would you be interested? So that's the question. Now I'm gonna jump forward just a moment and dial in just on this question and how you can use this specific question in your practice. If you're not using it already, or even if you are, here's how we use it. Most people we've found will check yes on this question. Yes, they're interested in whitening their teeth. I mean, if you put the opposite question in here, is, do you prefer brown teeth? Well, most people do not prefer brown teeth. So white teeth, absolutely. So then the follow-up question, when you see this on the dental health history form, then the dental assistant or the hygienist would follow up and say to the patient, I see you're interested in whitening your teeth from what you filled out here on the form. Would you consider $1 a day to be a pretty reasonable investment to whiten your teeth? Every patient will say that. All they hear is $1. Say $1, yeah, absolutely, $1 would be great. And then the response to that is we have a great program in our office where, as long as everything is in order for you clinically, we can start whitening your teeth today, and it's just $1 a day for the rest of your life. No, I'm kidding. It's not $1 a day. It's just $1 a day. In other words, what we do is we'll take an imprint of your credit card. It's $30 a month, $1 a day, until the balance is paid off. So that is one that we have talked about in the past. In Smiles for Life, we've incorporated that into the Smiles for Life campaign, that you can do that as an option for your patients, is they can pay $30 a month until the balance of their donation is paid off. So it is a great way to do it. If you're not doing this in your office in non-Smiles for Life season, there is a technology solution for this through our relationship with Payment Alliance, the credit card processing company, where they can help you set up an online terminal where you can enter the information. It's in a secure database, and it will clear that credit card every month for you for $30. Send your report back every month, show you what cleared, and you're on your way. Now, this is the only procedure that we recommend doing this with. In addition, you might consider doing it with Invisalign if you get a down payment that covers the lab cost. Everything else we recommend ought to be financed through a third-party financing company. But whitening, the cost is relatively low. It's a high engagement procedure and is a great way to get patients started in a conversation about elective dentistry. So this is a really easy way to do it and make it easy for patients to start doing it. So that's a recommendation here in that area. So back to our regular experience, one of the first things that we look at on that dental history form is, did the patient check whitening? Most of them do. It's like 80% of the patients check whitening. So then naturally, what do you think we look for next? Well, it would follow that if the patient checked, yes, I'm interested in whitening, what would you expect to see in the treatment plan? Well, you would naturally expect to see whitening being recommended or being written up in the treatment plan. What do we find? In more than the majority, 80% of the cases, if not more, there is no whitening anywhere in the treatment plan. Why? Why is there no whitening? Well, nobody looked at the form. In other words, we get in such a a rush a lot of times. We're running behind and we know the patient filled out the paperwork. And a lot of times we look at the dental medical history form and we glance at it to see if there's just anything glaring that we ought to be aware of. And then we move on because we've got to get through the appointment and get the patient on their way so we don't run behind. Nobody looked at the form. Now, here's what I'm going to highlight because it has more than to do, it's not just about whitening. This has everything to do with case acceptance. You're familiar with this model. We talk about it a lot. Let me just refresh your memory. Usually when we talk about getting results, we go back and forth between results and actions. What actions are we going to take? What actions are we going to take in order to get the results that we want? We go back and forth between those two things, back and forth, results, actions, results, actions. Every once in a while, we take a time out to talk about the strategy or the plan that is going to be the underlying strategy that we're going to build on. Then every once in a while we talk about the values or the beliefs that are really core to what we do, and then rarely, if ever, do we ever talk about the natural laws or the truths that are the foundation of everything we do. So you all know, if you spend any time with me at all, is that we start first at the natural law level. What's the natural law of its place? Then we build the beliefs on top of that, the strategy, the tactics, and then the result. So let's talk about the natural law that is in play here that is absolutely critical. So it's what we call the law of integrity. Basically, the law of integrity says that we want to be consistent with who we say we are. If we say we're one way, we want to be consistent with that. In other words, in our mind's eye, just like you can see in the image with the little guy here, in our mind's eye, we have this picture of who we want to be or who we're supposed to be, and we naturally want to be consistent with that image or what it is that we have stated that we are or that we want to be. My favorite example of this comes from the American Heart Association, who did a fascinating study back several years ago that had absolutely nothing to do with dentistry, but has a lot of application. So they would, on a regular basis, do their fundraising campaign where they would go door to door in cities around the country and ask people to make a charitable donation to the American Heart Association for the purpose of curing heart disease. And what they found is that in their typical campaigns, that they would get about 17% of the households to donate. And so that was kind of the record to beat, is can we do better than 17%? So they did an experiment where they went into a town and they divided things up equally on a demographic basis. And they did two different things. In one area, they just did their typical go ask for money. But in another area, they did a survey first. They went out into those neighborhoods and they did a survey door to door, a community health survey. And basically the survey was, do you believe that heart disease is a serious health problem in our culture? Do you believe that money should be dedicated to curing heart disease? So it's all basically just asking people what they thought was important in that area. Then they went back a couple weeks later and asked for a donation to the American Heart Association to cure heart disease. What they found is in the neighborhoods when they just went and asked for money, yeah, it was 17% consistent. In the neighborhoods where they went and did the survey first and then went back and asked for money, 52% of the households donated. They nearly tripled their results. Why? What was the reason that they were able to get such a dramatic increase in their results? Well, it's one thing. It goes back to that natural law. Here's what happens. They went and did the survey, and they asked people to make a declaration of what their beliefs were. What is it that you believe in this particular area? Then, when they came back and asked them, literally, but not exactly word for word, to put their money where their mouth was, who showed up but Jiminy Cricket? Now, what was Jiminy Cricket's purpose? What was his job in Pinocchio? Right? Pinocchio was obviously a puppet, wasn't a real boy, and so Jiminy Cricket came along, and Jiminy Cricket was his conscience and told him, don't be a liar, tell the truth, be consistent with who you say we are. Jiminy Cricket helped him remember the law of integrity, that we have to be consistent with who we say we are. Well, most of us have that built in. We naturally want to be consistent with who we say we are. So when you combine the law of integrity with the law of reason, and the law of reason says this: people buy for their reasons, not your reasons. When I come into the practice, if I'm a patient, I'm going to accept treatment for my reasons, not necessarily for your reasons. And there's where we get off track, because more often than not, we follow the typical scientific method. And the scientific method in dentistry is diagnose, treatment plan, present. Go in, find everything that's wrong, give the patient our reasons why they should have it done, and then we expect them to accept it. And it flies in the face of natural law. People don't buy for your reasons. They buy for theirs. And so when all we do is give them our reasons, we violate the law. We've broken the law. Actually, we don't break it. We just violate it, because you can't break a natural law. You don't break it, it breaks you. So they buy for their reasons, not for your reasons. So here's the question. What is the equivalent of the survey? In your office, what is it? Well, because this has direct application. That survey in the dental office is the dental health history form. You give your new patients and periodically your existing patients the opportunity to fill out the dental health history form. Now, for most in dentistry, they view this as a compliance issue. We got to take their history. In fact, in most states, you're required to update their medical history at every visit. And you have to note that in their chart that you updated their medical and dental history. So you're required to do it by law. And so most look at this as, okay, we have to do it by law, so we had them fill it out. We've got that at record. It's in their chart. We've complied. We're good. We're moving on, without realizing that this can be one of the most powerful case acceptance tools that you have in dentistry. It's like the survey. It gives them an opportunity to write down in writing what's important to them and what it is that is on their mind. It gives us an opportunity to plug into the law of reason. What are their reasons? What is it that they want? What are they interested in? What's been their past experience? And it's in writing. And so when it's in writing, you have the law of integrity working for you, because then they have to be consistent with what they've written down. So here's the dental portion of this. And I'm sure that yours looks similar to this. And now, even more, here's the medical portion of this. And let me just mention a compliance point along these lines. In many states today, in your medical history form, you are required to have a yes, no, a yes and a no box next to everything that you have in your health history. it is no longer, in many states, it's no longer permissible just to have a check the box if it's an issue. It has to be a yes box or a no box, so they have to check yes or no on every single item. So you notice on this one as an example, this is just an example, is there's a yes and no for every condition, everything that's on this form, yes and no. So your state may be different. In many states, this is now standard and required. You have to have yes, no. So you might check in your state. I know in the state of California, of course, it is required that you have yes and no on each question. So for example, on this one, just as a point of interest, and actually on both of them, what we recommend is on your medical history form or your dental history, wherever it fits the best, that you customize this and make sure that you include on your history form questions that have to do with specific treatments that you offer in your office. So we've talked a lot about sleep apnea in the past. Any of you that have been to Dr. Kent Smith's course on treating sleep apnea are familiar with this. So for example, if you're treating sleep apnea in your office, then you would obviously want to have sleep-related questions. So in this example, they have the Epworth sleep scale right on the medical history form so that patients can take that on the front end. So you got to customize it depending on what the different treatments are that you provide, medical as well as as dental. There's all kinds of examples, but highly recommend you make your own form so that it specifically addresses the type of treatments that you offer in your practice, and you can get their background and their understanding of where they're coming from. So the medical dental history form becomes critically important just because of those two natural laws. We want to be consistent with who we say we are. That's the law of integrity. And the law of reason, we buy for our reasons, not for your reasons. So find out what my reasons are as the patient, and then help me be consistent with that and do something about it. So project number one, I've given you two specific action items here for starters. One, relook at your whitening question on your dental history form. And we've given you a recommendation of what that question might be on your form, and make it easy for patients to whiten their teeth, high engagement. We've incorporated all of this into Smiles for Life as an example so that you can carry it on throughout the year. So one, make it easy. Number two, relook at your dental history form, relook at your medical history form, redo them, update them, make sure you got yes and no, make sure you have specific questions that deal with the specific types of treatment that you offer in your practice. It just raises their awareness level. And then obviously what comes next is you're going to take this form and you're going to ask follow-up questions to get the rest of the story, to find out really what's on their mind. So for example, if somebody checked that they're interested in replacing missing teeth, then the obvious question would be, Mrs. Jones, I see that you've checked here, replace missing teeth. Tell me a little bit more about that. Which teeth are you talking about? What's been your experience there, et cetera, et cetera. Well, she has to comment on it because she checked it. And now she's going to give us the rest of the story. So those are your first two action items. Now, a couple of points on this form, critically important. One of my favorite questions is, what's the most important thing to you about your smile and your dental health? So what I want to know at that very first visit is, when I'm talking to them, I want to know what's the biggest thing on their mind. What's fascinating to me about this question is if it's on the form or if you ask it just verbally, is different people hear that question differently. What's the most important thing to you about your smile and your dental health? Some people hear that question as, what's the biggest thing that's wrong with your smile and your health? Other people hear it as, what do you like the most about your smile? Everybody hears it differently depending on what where they are when they get asked that question where their thinking is. It's a very open-ended question. People hear it differently. So whether you have this one on the form so you can ask a follow-up question about it, or whether you ask it face-to-face when you're sitting down with them, critically important question. Here's the next one, is what's the most important thing to you about your visit today? Especially for a new patient, I want to know what's on their mind today, what they are trying to accomplish, what's the biggest thing. Because if we don't address what's on their mind today, we're in trouble. They'll never come back if we don't address what's on their mind today. So whether that's on the form or you ask it, and here's my recommendation, is things that are in writing get paid attention to. If it's in writing, the patient has a greater likelihood they'll respond to it, and we don't leave anything up to chance that it'll get asked. So that's one that you might want to put in writing so that they can put their answer, whether it's a short answer, long answer, but then you can follow up with a verbal question to make sure that they have an opportunity to express themselves. Got to know what's on their mind today, or they'll walk out. Let me tell you a brief example of that. This is a practice that we were in recently, and a new patient had come in, and they were checking out, and one of our top practice advisors had an opportunity just to chat briefly with the patient on their way out and just ask, how was the visit and the whole deal. And they said, everybody seemed friendly, everybody was nice, but I sure wish that I could have had done what I wanted to have done when I walked in here. And it turned out what happened is that patient had a specific request, a specific need, and the team got so stuck on doing the comprehensive exam, doing the whole treatment plan, presenting everything to the patient, that nobody paid attention to what was on the patient's mind when they walked in the door. And so they left dissatisfied because their initial desires never got fulfilled. Well, that patient's at high risk of never coming back. What's the most important thing to you about your visit today? Again, remember the law of integrity. People want to be consistent with who they say they are, and our job is to help them do that. So the law of reason, again, says people do things for their reasons, not ours. So our job is to help them get what they want. And so what is it that they want? You got to figure out what they want. And that is job one. Now, many of you will remember, and let me just review this because it's one of my two favorite questions on the dental history form. And if you're using these, it is killer. If you're not, you're at a significant disadvantage. My two favorite questions on the dental history form were these. Scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. How important is your dental health to you? And they choose 1 through 10, and they circle the answer. Now, our experience has been that most patients will circle an 8, 9, or 10 on that question. They wouldn't be there if it wasn't important to them. So usually they rate this pretty high. Then the follow-up written question is, scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current health or smile? Again, 1 through 10, we find most patients will circle a 5 or lower, a 6, a 5, a 4, or lower. So is that good? Yeah, it's great for us, because when you look at the difference between how they answered those two questions, there's a difference. There's a problem here. And that problem is called cognitive dissonance. That's the psychological term for this. Now, any of you that remember Psychology 101 will remember cognitive dissonance. Here's the description, the definition. Cognitive dissonance is excessive mental stress and discomfort experienced by an individual who holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values at the same time. So 2 or more contradictory ideas or beliefs at the same time. Let's go back and look at this. You see the problem? I've said yes, my dental health is a 10 to me. It's very important. Oh, and by the way, I ain't doing jack squat about it. I'm performing at a 5 when I believe that it's a 10. That's cognitive dissonance. So, in order to stay sane, what do I have to do? I've either got to downgrade my belief and value system or I have to change my actions. So, when they circle this in writing, we've illustrated this right there in front of them. And then the follow-up question then is very, very clear, which is, Steve, I see that your dental health is very important to you. You rated it a 10, and that you rated your current smile a 5. That's quite a difference. Tell me about that difference. Tell me why you rated yourself a 5 today. Now, we get the opportunity to listen to all of the things that they perceive are issues. Again, remember, law of reason. They're going to do things for their reasons, not our reasons. And so it gives us an opportunity to hear what their reasons are, what they perceive, what's important to them, because that's what we're going to talk about. So those are my two favorite questions. We've talked about those for years. I'm constantly amazed when we go into practices that are still not using those, because that's one of the most powerful things that you can have on your dental history form. So never forget that cognitive dissonance definition. It illustrates it, and then you can go right in and help them solve that problem. So when you see all these things on their dental history form, then simple follow-up questions are in order. Just simply say, gee, Steve, I see you rated your current health a 5. Tell me about that. Tell me how you came to that conclusion. What are the things that concern you about your current smile? I'm simply going to give them an opportunity to explain their answers on anything that's on their dental history form, medical or dental. This deserves some focused time and conversation, because we'll find out what they want, why they want it, and why it's a concern for them. And what we're going to do then, as they share those things, is we're going to keep hitting the rewind button. What I mean by that is we want to repeat back to them the things that they have told us are important. So, for example, if I said to you, the reason that I rated my current smile a 5 is because, I know I've got some old fillings there. I've noticed that some of my teeth are starting to crack. I don't like the shade of my teeth. They look old, and I want them to look as young as possible. And so I just don't think they match up to that. So then you would respond by saying, okay, Steve, so your biggest concern is old fillings that look like they might be causing some damage to your teeth, and you want your teeth to look as young as possible. Have I got that right? I'm going to repeat it back until the patient says yes. Now, that's the yes before you ever start talking, before you ever do a diagnosis, ever do a treatment plan, you ever present treatment. It's the yes before the yes. And if you can get the yes before the yes, then you're well on your way to case acceptance, because you've agreed to agree. You've both agreed on what it is that's important to the patient. You've agreed on their reason. And then from that point forward, you're both on the same page together. So here's my word of warning. You got to stop. Because in my book, you do not have permission to diagnose. You do not have permission to say open wide and let's take a look, until and unless you have agreement on what their concerns are, what they want, and what their reasons are. You do not have permission to diagnose until you understand their reasons and they've said, yes, that's what's important to me, that's what I'm looking for, that's why I'm here. Then and only then can you do your diagnosis and do your exam. If that becomes the rule, case acceptance will reach new heights if you get common agreement on what the patient really wants. And then you can tie that in to what they need. Something in what they say will highlight things to which you can tie all of the things that they need. If I said I want my teeth to look younger, I want them to look their very best, then virtually anything that you talk about from a need standpoint is going to tie into that. Because I got to keep my teeth, I want them to look their best, but we've got to have a common point of understanding. Now, on that point, remember back to the law of integrity, which says we want to be consistent with who we say we are. The three most powerful words in case acceptance that employ the law of integrity are these: like you said. So as you're now doing your diagnosis and your treatment planning, then you would say, now Steve, like you said, you want to have a younger looking smile. You want them to look the best they possibly can. You want to make sure that those teeth that have the old fillings are preserved in the best shape possible. And so here's the things that I would recommend based on what we've taken a look at today. So I'm always going to go back to what I said I wanted. Like you said. That employs the law of integrity. If I'm not like I said I was, I'm crazy. I have to be like I said I was. So again, but I have to find that from the very beginning. I have to find out what it is that I want, what my reasons are, and then on the back end, you can say, like you said, here's what you wanted, here's what we've taken a look at, then here's what I would recommend to help you get what you said you wanted. We're tying it all back to what the patient said they wanted. So just as a quick summary, again, law of integrity. I hope I've repeated this enough. We want to be consistent with who we say we are. Give me an opportunity to tell you what it is I want, what's important to me, what my value system is, and the best way I can do that is by declaration in writing on the dental history and the medical history form. The most overlooked case acceptance tool in dentistry. Get your patients to proclaim up front what's important to them in writing and then ask follow-up questions. We have to find out what they want before we tell them what they need. Wants trump needs. Wants are always first, then needs. People come before teeth. Got to focus on the person before you focus on the teeth. If the teeth come first, the teeth are going to walk right out of the office. Emotional comes before the clinical, meaning we have to plug in to where the patient's coming from emotionally and what they want before we can talk about their clinical needs. Wants before needs, people before teeth, the emotional before the clinical, and then finally, it's the patient's agenda before your agenda. We've got to be on their agenda. It's what they want first, and then we'll help them understand what they need because we're going to tie it into what they want. Stay focused on your patient's agenda. Look at their written agenda. It's right there in front of you when they fill out that form. So I hope that I have you sold on the fact that the dental and medical history form is one of the greatest tools we have in dentistry. It deserves more time, attention, focus, and discussion when you sit down with your patients. Today, like never before, in addition to what we find on their dental history form, the medical history form is absolutely critical because we know now that what's going on in their mouth is tied in to everything that's going on with their physical body. Things that they put on their medical history form can be huge signs of things that we can help them with from a whole health perspective. If somebody has a history of heart disease, a history of arthritis, a history of high blood pressure, all of those inflammatory conditions, then we know the chances are pretty high that there's going to be a periodontal issue. We know that. So looking at these issues in writing before we ever get started can change the whole context of everything that we talk about. Before we get to questions, real quick, just a couple of reminders from today, a couple of resources. One, on everybody's desk that is listening today has landed a package from the Crown Council with a gift for everyone in the office. There is a Mentor of the Month program entitled The Science of Setting and Achieving Goals. That's on CD. Yeah, with that CD, there is a 3x5 card for every member of the team. If your doctor has not handed you that card, would you please ask him or her to go find it? And you can also get a copy of that Mentor of the Month with in written form. It's available in written form. You can just email us for it or call us at the Total Patient Service Institute or at the Crown Council, 877-399-8677 if you'd like a copy of that in writing, or email us at answers@totalpatientservice.com. All of the things that we've talked about today are all key elements of great case acceptance. And as most of you know, that is what we cover in the Total Immersion experience. We consider Total Immersion to be basic training for every dentist and every team member in the Crown Council. It's the common experience across the board. So if you have not attended or it's been a while, I highly recommend that you make that a priority, because it is basic training for everything that we do in the Crown Council and helps the entire team achieve higher case acceptance results. What we've talked about today is just one example. So there are a few dates and locations to choose from coming up. More are always in the works all the time. So with that, I know there's a couple of questions, and actually I can see the questions here. So first off is, when we went through the medical dental history form, a number of you have asked for that. And so what we will do is we will post the example that I put up on the screen. We will post that with the webinar on crowncouncil.org, or if you'd like that sooner, you're welcome to email us at answers@totalpatientservice.com. Again, that's answers@totalpatientservice.com, and we will be happy to email you a copy of that in PDF form. So if you want to use that as an example of where to start, that would be great. Again, I'd recommend that you make your own, customize it to the treatment that you do and the specific things that you do in your office, so that those are things you can discuss with your patients. So that is there. Cognitive dissonance. Somebody is asking for a repeat of the definition. Let me go back to that quickly. I'll put that up on the screen. There it is. Cognitive dissonance is excessive mental stress or discomfort experienced by an individual who holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values at the same time. I was with somebody the other day that says, that describes my life. Next question is, where do you find out if your state requires yes and no boxes or options on your medical forms? I would suggest that you simply call your state dental society and ask them that question. The State Dental Society usually keeps up with the state requirements. If you're in California, you don't need to call. You got to have yes and no in California. In the rest of the states, again, it may or may not be required. But if I could just make this suggestion, even if it's not required, go ahead and do it. Because what it does, the purpose of yes and no is that it then requires an answer. It requires the patient to answer on every question, yes or no. They can't skip one and leave it blank. They have to answer yes or no on every one. So it just ensures that you're getting a complete medical dental history on every patient without question. Thanks for being with us today. I hope that all of those, I hope these have been good reminders for some of you. I hope it's been good for others of you if this is the first time you've heard some of these things. Our goal at the Crown Council is to constantly be pushing the envelope on delivering great service to our patients and creating a culture of success in your dental practice. A big part of that is delivering great service to your patients and getting the highest levels of case acceptance so patients will repeat and refer. This is one of a large volume of ideas, techniques, and systems to do that. So we hope that you'll get focused on this one aspect today as you move forward to work on other aspects tomorrow. Again, come see us at Total Immersion around the country. Love to see you, and good luck as you work on your medical dental history forms and take things to the next level. Thanks for being with us today. Look forward to being with you at our next webinar.